Good morning, folks. Welcome to Coffee with Artists. My name is Rachel Wilkins. Delighted to be here this beautiful Friday morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We have a great guest joining me from Pocatello, Idaho this morning. We have the awesome Ashley Delonas. Welcome, Ashley.
Hey, Rachel. Thanks.
I've got you up super early as well because it's mountain time is what, 10 a.m. there this morning?
It's 9 a.m., so not too early.
On a Friday morning. I'm so sorry.
It's just fine.
Well, I'm glad that you're here. I know I've known you for a little while now. I'm so fascinated by your work. I am even more excited and fascinated by your beautiful studio because it's just gorgeous. We're going to talk about a ton of different things today. But let's just start by telling people a little bit about your background. Now, you are somebody that has a very unique story in the sense that you did not even begin to create artwork until you were pregnant. Yep. Very, very unusual to have, not that kind of huge backstory. So tell us a little bit about that and why you maybe think that is.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't start doing any artwork till I was pregnant, and that was, I think I was 22. So I was a young mama, and it just kind of emerged out of me as, I watched my belly grow, and I just got more curious into all the forms of artwork, started painting, started sculpting with clay, and then my son was born, and I started doing these light switch covers that were made out of polymer clay and embellished with beads. And that was a big hit locally through my friends and family. And I started selling them. And then I was encouraged to do shows with them. And so the first 3 years or 4 years of my life, I was solely a light switch cover artist, making and selling the polymer clay light switches. And I think I've sold over close to 2,200 of them during that time, and since then it's just morphed into a different medium throughout the years, and it's continually morphing into different mediums.
So for those who have no idea what a light switch cover is, and this was something brand new to me because we do not have these in the UK. This is a very American thing. Yeah. Can you show us a little example of what these look like?
This is a light switch cover. Let's see if I can get it. So it's all wrapped with clay.
Wow.
And I don't know if you can see, but there's inlaid over here beadwork, and then this is all like stamped in mousse with the pine trees. So yeah, I have made over 2,000 different styles and techniques with these, and then I just was kind of burning out with them, so I was looking to do other things and got into painting and glass.
So you're pregnant at 22. Your son is now 11.
Yep.
So you've had only a short career in terms of the art world. Like to put out 2,000 pieces of work, whether that is original paintings, reproductions, that is a huge inventory for an artist with such a short career. How did you balance that with being a full-time mom?
Luckily I got to stay home with my son the first year of his life. So I got to just really hit it hard when he was, growing, and I was breastfeeding him. And then it, catalyst into me wanting to learn more about art. So then I went into art school and got my degree, and that opened up a lot of doors for me. So
do you feel like, I'm thinking about this right now because I can't imagine doing 2,000 of a very similar style of work, unless I was insanely passionate about it. So there must have been something here that that's driving you to create these. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It was honestly probably mostly the compliments I'd be getting from people, and the orders just kept filling in, and so it kind of gave me that confidence boost to keep diving further and seeing how I can manipulate the clay and what kind of techniques I could do to on a light switch. It's a functional piece of artwork, so it definitely targeted people who wanted functionality in their art, and as well as I've never met another light switch cover artist out there, so that was kind of a niche that I got to fill. And for years I was known as the light switch cover artist, so here in Idaho.
So something like that, how long would it take you from ideation to completion? Like how long is the process?
That's one thing I really nailed down to a science for me, because I do know that I could probably spend 4 hours on one light switch cover, and I'm going to want to ask a couple $100 for it for my time. But, not a lot of people are going to want to spend a couple $100 on light switch. So I would time myself. I'd say, it depends on if it was a single, double, or triple light switch cover. So let's just say a single light switch cover, I give myself 1 hour, and, I put it down and walk away, and, and it's done, so that I stay within that time frame to accommodate that budget for my customers, which is something I still do now with some of my pieces. I'm very conscious because you can just put dozens and dozens of hours, and sometimes people don't know the difference. Walk away.
So you're somebody who is born and bred in Idaho. You're in Pocatello. Tell us a little bit about your corner of the earth. What is it like?
We are surrounded by the most beautiful mountains. I live in it's called Mink Creek Valley. And so everybody here is big in outdoors, big hikers, big hunters, fishing, everything you can think about doing outdoors, rafting. So we're really spoiled that way. And that has definitely been my driving motivation for all the theme and content that I tend to create and make. It's all outdoor oriented.
And I've been very fortunate because I got a little tour of Ashley's place recently on one of our coaching calls. And it is just, you have such a beautiful studio, and obviously that amazing view of just open space and greenery and mountains outside. That has to really inspire your practice.
It does. Absolutely. When you're surrounded by beautiful things and inspiration and different sunsets and sunrises, definitely, feeds my artistic drive.
Are you somebody that has ideas and then kind of takes that to the studio, or are you somebody that just gets up, grinds, goes to work, and sees what comes?
Yeah, definitely. It's probably a little bit of both. It probably depends on what it is I'm making. I definitely get up and grind and get stuff done. I'm pretty goal oriented that way.
You're a seriously hardworking artist, Ashley, that's for sure. So I want to go back, if we can. Tell me about life before you actually had this, divine inspiration, whatever you want to call it, when you were pregnant and decided this is for me. I want to be an artist. Tell me about growing up in Idaho before. Was there ever any stirring or passions for anything creative, not necessarily the visual arts? What was it like growing up? Did you?
I grew up being an Antler, so with music and singing and dancing. So, that's a form of art. So that's probably was my artistic drive, is expressing myself through dance. And then, you graduate high school and that kind of ends a little bit. And then I met my son's father, and we, had our son. And so it really just kind of came out organically. Like I said, when I was pregnant, I never really considered the visual arts until then. So
what does it feel like when you create a piece, like seeing that piece come together? Do you feel like, I know with a lot of artists that I talk to, when they're in that moment, when they're in that studio and they're like working on that piece, it's almost like an out of body experience, right? It's like you're channeling this from somewhere else. Do you have any stories like that you can relate to?
Yeah, definitely with my bigger, most recent pieces, the Antler chandeliers back behind. I do all the shed hunting, so you spend countless hours in the mountains, in the mud, in the rain, in the wind, and you learn a lot about animal patterns and preferences and where they can drop their antlers every year. And when you find, a magnificent big antler that an animal just let go and relinquished, then it's nothing short of inspiration. And, I come home with those antlers and, stare at them and want to learn more about the animals and their habitat and their lifestyles. And the symbolism behind antlers for me is very huge, because they, shed those antlers every year to make way for new growth. And it's something for me as an artist that every year I want to look back on, like, what do I need to shed in my life to let go of, and to make more room for that new growth. So nature has always been my driving force and inspiration to continually grow.
Can you tell us, like, I love the idea that you're not somebody who needs to ever go, well, probably not very frequently, out to an art store to get the supplies to create these pieces that you have. So much of it is found material. So much of it comes from nature. Give us a kind of a tour of what a day looks like when you go out looking for these materials.
Yeah. So early in the morning, you have to do a lot of what we call scouting first. So you got to know where the animals have been, because deer, moose, and elk all shed their antlers at different time frames in the year. Moose shed in the winter, deer shed in the spring, and elk shed in the summer. So luckily, you kind of get to go back to back to back. So you got to know where the big bulls and bucks are hanging out. So there's a lot of knowledge just within that, and then you got to spend days and countless hours hiking and putting in a lot of miles on the ground just to get an opportunity to find a dropped shed.
That's amazing. Is there ever any risks or challenges that have come with that? Have you ever found yourself in front of any wild animals, perhaps?
Yeah, I've ran into a cougar once. That's not as likely to run into a predator as one likes to fantasize that it is. But mostly the danger comes through just the high altitudes and the steep slopes that you have to climb. Those big bulls, they like to hang out in the most treacherous, steep cliffs. And so you got to be willing to kind of put yourself in a vulnerable situation to go find those antlers, which is something I thrive off of. I really thrive off of climbing big mountains. Another thing I do is in Idaho, we have 9 mountains that are over 12,000 feet.
Wow.
And I've climbed all 9, but we have 100 11,000 foot peaks. So we're spoiled with a lot of mountains here. And, I've been living here my whole life. I've got to learn a lot about our mountain ranges and the different valleys and, meadows that the animals live in.
So it's very physical what you do. I mean, you've got to go out into this rugged terrain and climb these, huge altitudes to get these hides that are shed. But then they're not easy to carry, these things, right? They're physically very complex in their shapes. They're not something you can just kind of throw in a backpack. Nope. Tell us about that process. Like how do you even come back with these things?
You bring a lot of bungee cords and rope, and a good sturdy pack frame that one's built to carrying heavy loads of meat or antlers, and you got to be in pretty good physical shape to be able to make it happen. A term that's used between shed hunters is called brown gold. So you can come out with a pack full of brown gold, which is all the brown antlers. So it is challenging, but I love the sport. It is my favorite thing to do. I would rather shed hunt than do anything else.
You talk about the chatter between shed hunters and it being seems like there's a community of it, like a subculture, if you will, that we know nothing about. So tell our listeners a little bit about that. Like, is it a competition to get out there and get the best?
It is, and it's different than, I would say, let's say hunting or fishing, because with fishing, let's give the example, you can go to the same river, fish the same eddy, and you typically will pull out the same big fish. Fishermen don't ever give out their best fishing secrets, and hunters don't ever give out their hunting secrets. But when it comes to shed hunting, that's even more rare and special, because deer, moose, and elk only drop once a year. And, a lot of times they'll come back during that time frame and shed within, the same area kind of, but you will not find any shed hunters giving out their secrets or their spots because of how rare it is. Once you find a spot where some antlers have been dropped, you take it to your grave. I mean, it's funny being around a whole bunch of shed hunters because we'll tell about our experiences, but we will never exploit the area just because it's grown in popularity, especially in the last couple of years, and more people are in the field. In Idaho, we're really spoiled that we do not make anybody take a shed hunting class and get registered. But Utah, you have to take a class and register, and then you have to wait, I think it's May 1st, before you can even start looking. Idaho, you can shed hunt all year long without any rules or regulations. And that is because of more people in the field. Shed hunting can stress the animals out, especially during their weakest time. there's this saying that calls the winter weakens, but the spring kills, meaning all the deer and elk and moose have ate all that they possibly can that's around in the winter, and nothing's grown quite yet in the spring. So they're at their most vulnerable spot in the spring. And they do not want shed hunters going out and trying to find those antlers, pushing these animals around and stressing them out. So, yeah, shed hunters, it varies different state to state. And like I said, Idaho's pretty spoiled that we don't have any of those rules, at least yet. I see it in our future, actually, which might be the right course of action.
Well, I'm glad that you have a pretty substantial collection, because I have had a sneak peek at what you have in your studio, and it's pretty amazing. So you are now transitioning from, you know, the pieces that you made over 2,200 of, these light switch covers, into these gorgeous chandeliers, glass and antler chandeliers that we see. We get a sneak peek at one in the background there. Tell us a little bit about that process, how the idea came about, and let's talk a little bit about that.
I can't help but look at anything, materials or objects, and think to myself, like, how could I turn that into art, or how can I make that better? And when I met my husband and he started teaching me about shed hunting, and when I found my first shed, and then my second shed, and then third, and now I'm, into my, 7 years later, I've found a good 100 or so. It is nothing short of inspiration. One being, it is completely original and organic, and no two sheds are the same. They are made by that animal and dropped by that animal. So every time is different. And right before I was shed hunting, I was really getting into glass. I grew up watching my mom do stained glass. So I kind of had a basis of what that was. And so I just decided, I found a beautiful antler and I put glass in it. And I was like, light bulb moment. I was like, every antler chandelier I've ever seen be made throughout my life wasn't very artistic, well built, good designs, but didn't have that flair and feminine qualities that I think it should have. And so I made a whole bunch of single glass and antlers, and then I started screwing the antlers together and then putting glass throughout the whole composition. And now it's at the beginning stages of what I'm wanting to do with them.
I think what I'd like to do is to share. I'm gonna try and pull up your website, because just for folks to get an eye on what this actually looks like, because it really is amazing. So let me see if I can do that right here. Here we go. Okay. All right. You can see my screen, right? You can see that? Great. Yeah. So, I mean, these pieces are just stunning. They're stunning. And like you shared, like no two pieces are the same. Now, talk to us about the intricacy here. Like, how are you creating these pieces? How are you, you're working in almost negative space, right? When you go between kind of the sections of these antlers. How do you even come up with the concepts, and how do you put these pieces together? What does the assembly process look like?
Most stained glass artists that I grew up with, they are very traditional in the form that they make a pattern and they stick within that pattern, and there are no holes, meaning like negative space, in between. And that's great, but I really liked how the assortment and randomness in between each piece of glass, combined with a lot of those crystals you see in those pieces are pieces we find in mountains. Idaho's called the gem state because we have the most gems to go hunting for, crystals or opal or whatever you want to go look for. And so a lot of those pieces I found myself, and then you come home, you polish them, and then you got to wrap it in foil and solder it into the composition. So it's very intricate and time consuming. Every thought is meticulously thought out, and it's something that I've spent the last 7 years perfecting, especially those images you see in the chandelier of the elk. Those images I cut out of copper, and I put it on the glass, and then I soldered the lead on top of it. And it's something that took me over a year to learn and to perfect, because usually when you do stained glass, you have your soldering iron and it's extremely hot, and you're soldering your lead and you're tracing the outside edges of the glass. But when you put it in the center of the glass, 90% of the time it cracks instantly because of the heat. And so there was a whole year where I was just perfecting and learning how I could get solder into the center of a piece of stained glass and not have it shatter. So that's something that's kind of like my trade secret. I've not seen any other stained glass artist do this technique before. It's something I'm very proud of, and it speaks volumes in the piece itself for me.
Is there anybody doing this? I mean, I've certainly not seen anybody combine, the antlers with stained glass. Have you seen anybody else do anything like this?
Nope. That's something that did come out of my mind. And when I first had the idea, I got onto Pinterest and typed in glass and antlers, and I got onto YouTube and I got onto Google. I got on everywhere to see if it's been done before, and it hasn't. So I was like, oh, sweet. Maybe this is something that, that I get to capitalize on first. It is something I'm quite proud of too. So.
Oh, it's spectacular. As we look at this piece right here, which we've got a really nice close up on this piece. I mean, the detail is just stunning. And all I can think about is this must take you days, if not weeks to do.
It took me 2 months to make Relinquish. Wow. It was the first antler chandelier I made. It's the biggest one so far I've made. And, if you know anything about stained glass, you have to solder the front, and then you got to flip it over and solder the back. So the first panel, went by pretty good, and then the second panel, but when it came time to do the third panel, you have to climb inside of this to solder behind, and it was really tricky because you have to solder the back of those pieces. You can't just not solder them. It wouldn't be structurally sound. So. Every panel I did got harder and harder. So
what would you say has been your most challenging piece to date? Is there a particular piece?
Definitely this piece you're showing, which is called Relinquish. So it has 6 elk antlers in there, all which I found in the mountains of Idaho. It weighs close to 60 pounds. Wow. Those elk antlers, it's hard to tell in the picture, but I bet you they're 4 feet long, each of them. And then, all the glass and solder and lead and crystals in it.
It's got to be pretty heavy in terms of the weight of this thing. Wow. I mean, just spectacular. I want to take a look at some of the others because to see these visually is just, they're so powerful. Tell us a little bit about this piece.
So my deer antler pendants, those have 2 sets of deer sheds. So there's 4 deer antlers in there. And it's the same technique, screwing and welding the antler frame together first. And then you would just start with 1 panel. And those were a little bit easier to solder on the inside because it wasn't so narrow like Relinquished. I was able to flip it upside down and work on the inside of it and solder those lines. A lot easier. Amazing.
Now you have a really exciting show coming up. Tell us a little bit about what you have. Hopefully, if all goes well, with obviously the lockdown, and hopefully we're coming out of that pretty soon. But tell us about that show that you have coming up.
So I was accepted into Western Design Exhibition and Sale. It's a show in Jackson Hole. I think it's been around this might be their 28th or 30th year. This show to me is like the Harvard and Yale of art shows to get accepted into. People from around the world apply. Over 800 applicants apply, and they only accept 100. And I got in, and it is. I'm so pumped about it because again, this is where all the best of the Western designers, architects, and artists and influencers, they all get together at this show, and I'm hoping it, be my big break with these antler chandeliers.
Absolutely. I mean, they're just so gorgeous. I mean, I could see these hanging in just the most beautiful kind of Western homes. Really, really incredible work, Ashley. So this, I'm assuming this is your little guy.
Yeah.
Tell us about how, obviously we talked about balancing, motherhood with creativity. Is your son creative?
Yes, very much so. He will spend hours upon hours in the studio with me. So far, he's really liking the polymer clay. So he'll make light switch covers as well, and little sculptures and stuff. Yeah,
That's
he's definitely got the artistic blood in him.
That's awesome. So we talked about this big show that you have coming up, which is a huge, huge opportunity. I'm sure it's going to go phenomenally. We're rooting for you with this show. I know this is going to be kind of a pivotal moment for you. What are some other goals? What are some other aspirations that you have? What would you like to do next?
For the last 10 years, I have made a living off my artwork, like solely. It began with the light switches, and then it grew and grew and grew. And so I never needed to have a website, and I never needed to have a social media presence. And it wasn't until COVID last year that I do about 36 shows a year. So a lot of shows back to back to back to back. And it shut every single one of those shows down last year. And so I looked at it, I was like, well, for the last couple of years, I've always wanted to have a website. I've been asked, do you have a website? Do you have a website? So I was like, here's my opportunity to build a website. So I built a website, and I kept ignoring how important it is to have a social media presence. Yeah, I had Facebook, but I didn't really see the value of Instagram until I started listening to you and your podcast, and then I realized how much I'm doing myself a disservice by not capitalizing on that tool. So that is probably my next goal throughout these next 4 or 5 months, is to build my social media proof, essentially. Getting a lot of followers would be great, but I'm doing just fine. I don't, financially with selling my work. So it's more about the presence and the social media proof I'm wanting to build on the web. Also to note, I have been extremely terrified of being copied. And that is something I did not really see until I started listening to your podcast and realized that was the whole reason why I didn't do social media. And I think it took a level of maturity to be like, you're actually doing yourself a disservice by not, and you need to let go of those fears, like you just abandon those thoughts. And so I'm finally to that point where I no longer care. I feel like even if somebody wanted to do antlers and glass or lights, whatever it is, it's not me. It's not my signature style. They could never render or do what I do. So I think it comes with age. I think in my younger years, in my 20s, I think that's a youthful kind of fear. But now that I'm in my mid 30s, I really have a confidence piece that I didn't have in my 20s. So I'm wanting to share absolutely everything online now.
I think that's great. And I totally relate to that. I remember just always being so fearful about, people stealing your ideas. And it's, they say, well, imitation is the best form of flattery. But it is hard when it's your life's work, right? This is everything. This is your entire passion. This is everything. And it is hard. And I've had experiences where people have taken, literally for verbatim, things that I've produced, whether it's been content or artwork. And somebody said to me once, that's fine, because they're taking your old ideas and reproducing them. They're not up here with your new ideas, right? You have the next idea, and that's okay. Obviously, if it's something that is infringing on your trademark or copyright, that's a whole different subject. But in terms of like how we let that affect us emotionally, it's flattery. I mean, you're obviously doing something that is so just so visionary. It's so unique. It's something that nobody else is doing. But I imagine that this could become certainly a trend, and that's how trends start in the art world, right? There's always one person who's the thought leader, and I think that this is something that could become really inspiring to other folks who are watching this. So I think it's brave that you are putting yourself out there. I'm proud of you for doing it, and I'm excited to see what you do next. You've shared with me that you are a little introverted. And it can be a challenge. I think a lot of our community are introverted, and we spend a lot of time working alone, right? We're alone with our materials, and that it can be hard to make that transition and be public. Share with us a little bit about that and how maybe some of the challenges that you faced with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I'm in this studio all day, and I have been for years. And so I'd say 80% of my time when I make a piece, I am all by myself. And so, and then on the weekends, I'll go do a show, and that's when I shine and I sell my artwork. But then I come back home, 5 days out of the week, and I'm by myself. So, I think I'm pretty good when it comes to in-person conversations, but when it comes to like saying it online, that's totally different, and that is something I've never done. Instagram's been around for close to 10 years now, and I just barely got an Instagram account because that is how fearful I was of all these random strangers' opinions. Not my tribe, not my Idaho tribe, people who get me and who have seen me and watched me grow, but the whole masses. But as you grow older, I think, well, for me, I just got more confident and less of a I don't give a attitude, and that's really liberating. So
it is hard though.
It is hard because I'm not quite there yet. My goal is hopefully in the next year to have kind of learned Instagram, and then no longer scared of it, I guess.
And I think that it's a genuine thing to have fear about putting yourself out there on these platforms, because there is a huge element of vulnerability that comes with putting yourself out there. That I always go back to the expression, like the higher up the flagpole you are, the more people that can see your underwear, and it's so true. Like the more the more we do these kind of shows, the more I put myself out there, the more insults I get. And it's got to the point now. I used to let it completely derail me. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, for a long time, if somebody said something mean to me online, I was done for 3 days. Yeah. Like, I was, I'm throwing everything I'm throwing in the towel. I shouldn't do this anymore. I suck. I'm terrible. They're right. And there's some random person who knows nothing about me, who's never been around me or my work, but they're just, people get this confidence behind a keyboard and this. I don't know how people can just be so cutting and mean with their words. But eventually, like you said, I think it is an age thing. You start to realize that it says more about them than it does about you. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with you or your work. It's more about where they're at in their life and their inadequacies and their fears. And you can kind of use it as an empowering moment, as a teaching moment. I have one particular insult who I actually used it. Her comment in my book. She said, "What was it? You know nothing about art, dearie. Your art in quotations is nothing but cheap framed platitudes." I was like, wow. But I actually used it as a teaching moment. I put it as the opening to a chapter in one of my books to say, this is what people. Trolls, like Lydia's saying here, trolls are pretty hard to take. They are hard to take, but it's up to us what we do with that information, right? We can let it roll off us, and we can put it in its place. But I understand the fear of putting yourself out there. I do think there's the opportunity to put yourself out there in a detached way, to kind of separate yourself from you as the artist that's out there publicly. But it does take time.
Right. I think, like I mentioned earlier, the most thing I'm scared about with online is the whole copying issue, because nobody's seen the antlers and glass. It hasn't been done before, and it's only a matter of time. And there will be days that I'm like, I don't care, I'm fine with it, imitation's fodder. And then there are days I'm like, no, please, that's my baby. It took me like 20 years to make that, my mind. So.
And I think that's why it's even more important that you are out there, because if you are out there and people are seeing you everywhere, you're the authority.
Yeah. Right.
You're the thought leader.
Right. And I did have that epiphany. I was like, I would much rather be out there and everybody know that looks like an Ashley Delonas piece than them not know and then be like, oh, that's a Jane Doe's piece.
Yep.
And then they see my work. I'm like, oh, she copied Jane Doe. Like, no, 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 no.
Yep.
So,
Exactly.
It comes in waves. So
yeah. Well, this is a big shout out to all the trolls. You're not going to get the better of us. You're not going to take us down. Stay behind your keyboards. We're not interested. So tell us about some of the challenges you've experienced over the years.
Obviously self-limiting beliefs. I didn't grow up as an artist. I didn't start doing any artwork till I was 22 when I was pregnant. So that was probably my biggest one. I'd probably say it all goes back to the self-limiting beliefs. You're an amateur, or all you make is light switch covers, and that's why I broke away from making light switch covers, because I wanted to be more. I was kind of tired of being called the light switch cover artist, because I have so much more skills that I was making. So it's pretty much everything I created in my own mind. Also 2D artists versus somebody like me who makes this stuff. It's a lot easier for, I feel like, painters and drawers to copyright their work. Whereas like somebody who does like sculptures or even stained glass is probably, in my opinion, the one art form that is constantly stolen. It's so easy to look at a stained glass patterned window and you see exactly how to make it. You see somebody's painting, that takes a level of skill, or you could never hold that paintbrush and paint that same tree that same way. But with glass, it's a pattern piece. And that's also why I started doing the glass work the way I do, is because every piece is individually random, and it's not cookie cutter fit into a glass window to be able to be duplicated so easy.
And it's not like people can go and buy these supplies in a store. These are from nature.
Right.
Right. I'm glad you brought up limiting beliefs, because I feel artists just in general have a lot of them, but I think particularly women, like of the artists that I've met over the years, men are a lot more confident in their abilities, sometimes overconfident in their abilities, but some of the most accomplished and incredible women that I've met over the years are just have these limiting beliefs. And
I think it's definitely in our DNA. It can be. I really do think it'd be passed down generation, whatever field you're in, whether it be an artist or you're a businesswoman. I think it's just part of something most women have to deconstruct as we get older and wiser. And you really got to take the time to educate yourself on how much bull crap that is.
Yep. One of the best exercises that I like to do with limiting beliefs, particularly with artists that I work with, is, have you write them out. Like, what are those beliefs that you have? Write them on paper, look at them, see how limiting they are, see how much they're affecting your life, and then write the opposite. If you have a limiting belief that says, I didn't go to art school, therefore I'm not, a valuable artist, or I'm not somebody that people are going to respect. Write the opposite of that. How about I had an amazing life experience that college couldn't give you?
Right.
Take it and find the other side of it, find the positive, and create a list of affirmations that affirm, why those limiting beliefs are nonsense.
And the power of putting pen to paper, it is powerful when you write those stuff down. Something happens in your brain, and it's like, you just realize how much garbage it is.
Yep.
That is an exercise I did, a year or two ago, about my self-limiting beliefs, not being a good enough artist, not being able to be an artist who could sell fine artwork. I'm just an artist who sells, lower end. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it. Just smaller items, like, how dare I think of myself as something who could sell something that's 5 digits. So I think it just comes with age. You just get older. When you're in your 20s, a lot of us are still self-discovering and trying to figure it out. And everybody, all here in the West, Jackson Hole is known for the Mecca. And for years and years, everybody would be like, you got to get into Jackson. You got to get into Jackson. You got to get into Jackson. And I was letting everybody else tell me that I was not successful because I was not accepted into one of those those shows, and I wasn't in one of those galleries. It's because culturally we all typically have that persona that you're not a good artist if you're not found. But I was making a living, at 23, making $30,000 a year here in Idaho. That's pretty good off of nothing but art sales. And even though I was making a living, paying my bills, buying my food off of my art, I still was like, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist, because of that limiting belief that you have to be found, you have to be in Jackson, and or else you're nothing. And so I finally became woke in my 30s, where it's like, at that point, I'm like 7 years self-employed. I'm like, I've been doing this. I've sold, close to $200,000 all in art sales in the last, 7 years. And yeah, I'm a self-supporting artist. So it's the chatter. Yeah. You gotta learn how to let it go in and out.
Yep.
And it comes with training, lots of training and practice.
And not letting too much of that external crap in. So I think we've been taught to think small. We've been taught to not aim, above our station.
Yeah.
And I think it's incredibly toxic.
Right.
There's been this idea of, especially in the art world, that you can't sell out. Like you can't be somebody who you need to wait for the establishment to come to you. You need to be discovered. You need to be selected, right? You have to be invited. And I think, especially as women, for us to be like, no, I'm here. Yeah. I demand a seat at the table, and I'm worthy. Right. And I think people have a hard time with, when it comes to that limiting belief and the kind of society nonsense that is put in our head. They have a hard time putting a price on their work because of that.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about, the financial side of the art world, like making that shift from, these small items that you can sell for a couple of $100 to this 5-figure, which these pieces are worth at least 5 figures. Look at the hours, look at the material, look at the passion, look at the legwork and the mountain climbing that's involved in them. Of course, they're worth 5 figures. Yeah. But I know you've had some struggles with that. Tell us a little bit about
that. First time I've ever priced anything that high, and I will not sell it for anything lower than that. I don't care how long it takes me. I've noticed year after year after year, I've had small increases. I made more money, right? So I feel like you have to kind of, in order to sell something for 5 figures, you kind of got to do the years of work, the legwork, to get yourself to that point. I've had some people who ask for 5 figures and they've been doing it for maybe a year, and not that it's not worth it, but culturally as a society, I think people want to see that you've been around year after year after year after year. You've done this and this and this. You've grown yourself to almost kind of warrant that price tag. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm hoping so.
I have every confidence that that this is gonna happen for you. I mean, I just seeing the amount of passion that goes into these pieces, it translates, and you're somebody who has put a lot of effort into capturing the work as well. You photographed it really exceptionally. You have the presentation, because so much of it's not just about the art, right? Like you and I've talked about this inside of bootcamp. Like it's about the package around the art. It's about the brand. It's about the messaging. It's about all of the little pieces. And you're really doing that in an exceptional way. And art is a luxury item. And so people want a premium service. And I think that, when you get all those things in the right place, when you photograph it well, when you have the website, when you have all these pieces, it translates. It is a luxury item with a premium service. So I have no doubt that you're going to have success. And I know you're going to write it out and you're going to stick it somewhere on your wall that this is going to be your best show. You're going to sell out. We're going to manifest this for you. It's going to happen. And I can't wait to have you back and to talk about how successful it is.
I totally envision selling it out. I'm kind of at this point in my career where I might be putting too much into this show in September. We'll see, because I'm already successful. I'm already making a living and stuff. I'm burning out on making hundreds of little things here, and I want more of the passion. I'm more capable of big statement pieces like that. So yeah, we'll see. It's this fine line for me for this show. I don't want to put all my worth into this show, but then a part of me is like, this is your opportunity. So
I
I'm
think
trying to get all my ducks in a row for that show so that I'll have my social proof. It's all there, So when I see that collector, he or she sees that I've done that legwork.
what is that saying about big things don't or good things don't come from comfort zones. If you're feeling that fear,
Yep.
it's a
It
good
means
thing.
you should do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
You
Go
know,
ahead charging. I've invested. This is the most expensive show I've ever done. It's so far I'm in it about $3,000 just to have a 10 by 10 booth space. So I'm making. I have a lot more pieces in the making that are just as kick ass as this one that I'm super excited for. So
I'm excited for you. Who are your heroes, Ashley? Who are your, creative or otherwise? Who do you look up to?
you.
Stop.
No, you. Yep, for sure. You are my sensei. 100%. There's other artists that I'm inspired by. They're all local artists. But you.
Stop. Come on. That's very sweet. I love working with you. I think you're just so unique in what you're doing, and you're somebody who lives and breathes what they do and is truly passionate, and that's an amazing thing to be a part of, and I'm grateful that I get to kind of be on this journey with you. So
I'm way honored. I never even thought it was possible to speak with you, so this is a huge step.
You're so sweet, and I can't wait to come out to Idaho so we can come and see studio.
I will spoil you the Idaho style.
We can go hunting for sheds together.
It's only a dream. I've already fantasized about it. I've told my husband, I'm like, she ever comes to Idaho, we're doing this, and take you all over the places.
We're gonna make it happen. So we have a couple of people on the call. Let folks jump in and ask some questions. I'm sure there's questions for Ashley because this is such an unusual style of work that she has, an unusual process. Let us know if you have any questions. Drop them in the comments. Oh, here we go. Jen says, Ashley, you're having a dinner party for 6 artists, dead or alive. Who are they and what do you serve?
Dead or
alive. It doesn't have to necessarily be artists. It can be anyone that inspires you creatively or otherwise from the past or alive.
An author I love, Glennon Doyle. I hope I said her name right.
Yep.
You would be at the head of the table. Let's see. There's this local guy. He's not an artist, but he's a ultra runner. His name's Luke Nelson. He's accomplished amazing feats here in Idaho. So him, Frida Kahlo, probably Georgia O'Keeffe, and probably I want to say Buddha.
There you go. That sounds like a hell of a
enlightenment in the dinner table.
I love it. What are we eating? What are you serving?
Curry, some sort of curry dish.
Nice. I like it. Jan is a phenomenal cook, so maybe Jan, you can come too, and you can
create. Jan, you're invited. Come to Idaho.
There you go. Amazing. Well, Ashley, thank you for spending this time with me this morning. It's been so lovely. And, I'm hugely supportive of what you do. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's really stand out what you're doing. And I'm excited to see what you do next. I'm excited for your show in Jackson Hole. I wish we could come out there. I don't know whether the COVID restrictions will be lifted by then, but we'll certainly do our best to support you in whatever way we can. But tell our listeners where they can learn more about you.
I have a website, mountaingirlstudios.com, and I do have Instagram and Facebook, and I'm trying to get better at managing those two. So you can contact me those places as well.
Great. I'm dropping your website in the comments. We have one more question here, I think, from Lana. Hey, Lana. Ashley, your work is amazing and stunning. How do you get the trees and the deer in the stained glass? Do you paint them?
It's all out of copper and solder. So if you were to see it in person, it's very 3D and it comes off of the glass. and it's very textured. Each one of those pieces that has like an elk on it, just that one piece probably took me 2-3 hours just to get that solder on that glass. Because like I said, when you put heat on glass in the center of glass, it cracks and shatters. So you have to go at a wicked slow pace to be able to put that image in the center of that glass. So it's kind of my trade secret, something I'm flirting with, maybe teaching how people to do, but that's later in life. So yes.
That's exciting. Amazing. All right, folks. Well, this has been Coffee with Artists and the wonderful Ashley. Go follow her. Go check out her work. Go buy one of these pieces, folks. Go invest in one of these pieces. These are just absolute one-of-a-kind pieces. And, of course, follow Ashley on social media. Thank you, Ashley. It's been awesome having you.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, folks, we will be back again next week with another episode of Coffee with Artists. Do hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, and leave us a review if you feel inclined on Facebook, and we will see you again next week. Thanks, folks.